Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I promised, the theme and the topic of these classes would be random, different topics, whatever would be that people would ask me to share. So today, I got a very interesting question. Someone came to the office and she came to make a donation, and then we spoke for a little bit. And he was telling me, we're talking about the classes, he's enjoying them. He asked me, why don't I teach about the King David? He's very curious to know about King David, talking about the Haftorah and the synagogue, and this is the Haftorah. I said, no, this is a great idea for two reasons. First of all, King David is one of the most fascinating members of the Jewish history. There's very few people that are more integral and important in Judaism as King David. In fact, King David is not just considered a great warrior. King David is the beginning of the entire Davidic dynasty and the leaders, the kings of Israel. And more importantly, King David is the one who is going to be the great-great-grandfather of Mashiach. He is the source of the concept of Mashiach, and therefore King David is not just another historical figure of the many great historical figures in Judaism. King David is a truly special person. Now, I was thinking about a question about the Star of David, and so God willing, we'll talk a little bit about the Star of David, but also because I wanted just to talk about the yahrzeit for King David is coming up, that's true, on Shavuot. In a few weeks will be the yahrzeit of King David. Not think of that, it's a very good point. The holiday of Shavuot coming up as the yahrzeit of King David, and that reminded me to mention that tonight's class is in the memory of Yitzchak ben Yosef. And also, I wanted to do a class. Well, there's no audio. All right, tell me if you're hearing audio now. There should be audio coming in. I think that it'll be on your computer. It's showing that the audio is going. Okay. So the I wanted to break it up. My wife was telling me that we should have something different. That we should have or we told me we should have, history, stories, different things. So you know what? Tonight will be a story night. We'll ask the question, but tonight will be a story night. Also, I had less time to prepare because I had Hebrew school today. And there was a lot of work getting our Hebrew school running. Baruch Hashem, my wife did an amazing job with my help, but she did an amazing job. We had a virtual Hebrew school with all the different classrooms together, and then breakout rooms and Hebrew reading and back then prizes. So we're going to share some stories tonight about King David, and then we'll talk about, if we have time, about the Star of David. So King David comes from the family of Ruth, and it's actually good. I didn't think about it, but Shavuot is coming up. King David, and I'm going to a little bit. King David comes from the family of Ruth. He's also a great-grandchild of Yishai. Of Boaz, who was the direct descendant of Yehuda of the tribe of Judah. David himself is the son of a man called Yishai. He is the youngest of 7 sons. He's the youngest of 7 sons, and he is the black sheep of the family. In fact, when God appears to Shmuel Hanavi, to Samuel the prophet, and tells Samuel he wants him to go to anoint next king of Israel, because Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, had lost his dynasty by a sin he done with Amalek. He attacked Amalek and he didn't destroy Amalek completely. So as a result of that, God was very upset at Shaul HaMelech, and the prophet Samuel was sent to go and anoint a new king for the Jewish people. So he comes to Yishai and says, Yishai, he went in secret, by the way, because if the King Saul will find out why Shmuel Hanavi is traveling to this town to go and see what's going on, obviously be very, very upset. So he went in secret, and then when he gets there, he tells Yishai, "I've come to anoint one of your kids as the new king." So you can imagine it's very, very exciting. And one by one, his sons are brought before Shmuel Hanavi, and each and every single one of them, he says, "No, this is not the one. I don't feel the divine presence on this one." Until finally, all of his other sons come to Shmuel, to Samuel the prophet, and Samuel asks Yishai, "Do you have no other kids?" So he says, "Yeah, I have one more young son." There's a story about his birth that I'm not going to get to tonight. There's a whole story that there was questions about the birth of David HaMelech, if he was even a legitimate child. There was questions, let's just say that. So he was considered the black sheep of the family, and he's out in the field. They quickly run to bring him in, and when they bring him into the home from the field where he was tending to the sheep, immediately Shmuel Hanavi, the prophet, senses the Shekhinah, the presence of God resting upon King David, and he anoints him with the special oil that was used in the temple of anointing, and he says, "You will become the next king of Israel." Obviously, at this point, it's kept very, very secret. Nobody knew Shmuel Hanavi had traveled to this place, wherever the city was that David was born. No one knew that that he had any intentions to anoint a new king, but that was his beginning. The first time that David and King Saul meet is when when Saul is in a state of depression. Shaul HaMelech becomes very, very depressed. And so his advisors suggest that to cheer him up, they should bring in a skilled musician who will play and liven the spirits. And so one of the attendants present this young harpist, I guess is the right word, called David, and David becomes the next king of, and David begins to play the harp for Shaul HaMelech. Little did King Saul know that this young person playing the harp to entertain him will one day become his successor, who will become the next king of Israel. That's another discussion. Okay. At this time, King Saul is fighting a terrible battle with the Plishtim, the Philistines. The Plishtim, who lived in Gaza, it's always been a trouble place for the Jewish people, are attacking and bothering the Jewish people. And in the valley of Elah, I must tell you, unfortunately, I'm not going to go to Israel this year, but when I went to Israel on the JLI trip, on the Land on the Spirit trip, 2 years ago, one of the most eye-opening and amazing parts of the trip for me was we did some of the more historical parts of the JLI trip. They give different itineraries to different days. You could choose which track would be more interesting to you. I don't remember who it is that I went with on that particular day, and we went to the actual valley of Elah, which is where the Battle of Goliath takes place. There's a fascinating place to see. It's just the valley, but as you climb up the mountainside, and the verses are written in stone on the side of the mountain, describing what will be, it's truly an amazing experience to see. It's truly an amazing place to see history come alive. Anyway, let's decide. The story is that David sees that this giant, literally a giant of a man, King Goliath, is terrorizing and embarrassing and making fun of the Jews. And it says that every single day, Goliath would come stand on one mountain. So the Jews were camped on one mountain. The Plishtim, the Philistines, were camped on another mountain. And in the middle was an valley. And every day you would come out this giant Goliath, and he would roar, and you say, "Why are you dogs?" You would call them, "You lowlifes, that you're afraid to come out to battle, you're afraid to come stand up. Choose any one of your men and let them come and fight me. And if they are victorious and they kill me, we will all be your slaves. And if not, then you should become our slaves." And of course, the sight of this fierce giant, huge, massive person, 6 feet, 6 cubits high, that's like 12 feet high, towering figure, clad in armor, etc., would scare them, and they all ran away. No one was willing to take the challenge. Every single day for 40 days, he would come out and he would terrorize the Jewish people until when David HaMelech sees this, King David sees this, he says to him, "Why is no one?" He says to the Jew, "Why is no one attacking?" He says, "Go ahead." At that time, King Saul had made a promise that anyone that could kill Goliath would be given his daughter as a wife, meaning they would become the son-in-law of the king. So young David is filled with courage, and actually it said that when Shaul saw that this young boy, who wasn't even old enough to be in the army, the only reason why he even came to the place where the soldiers were camped is because his mother had sent a care package with food to send, and his mother had said, "I'm sending you with food that you can go and bring the food to your brothers." So he came to bring the food to his brothers. He saw Goliath embarrassing the Jews and calling them dogs, but he was too young to even be in the army. When King Saul sees that this young man wants to go fight against Goliath, he feels bad. I can at least give him a sword, give him armor. So he goes to give him his armor, and as he's putting the armor on David HaMelech, David can sense the animosity and jealousy already beginning to build up in in King Saul's eyes. And so he says, "Never mind, forget it, leave it alone, I don't need it." He goes out just like that with no armor. We all know the story, takes little pebbles, and he says a prayer, and with a slingshot, he kills Goliath. Obviously, after this, he becomes a tremendous hero of the Jewish people, that he was the one that went and with the slingshot, nothing more, to hit Goliath right between the eyes. And when Goliath fell down, he ran, he took his sword, he cut off his head, and he brought his head to the Jews, and all the Plishtim obviously ran away in fear, and now David becomes a national hero. At that time, King Shaul had promised his daughter in marriage. His oldest daughter was already engaged to somebody else, and so King David becomes engaged to marry Michal, the second daughter of Shaul, Michal, a beautiful lady, as a dowry. It was different times back then. Shaul was already very jealous of his new son-in-law. He was already become a national hero. People were all excited about him. He already had a lot of jealousy and hatred. And he says to his future son-in-law, "If you want to earn my daughter Michal's hand in marriage, you need to go and bring me 100 foreskins of our enemies." Yes, kill 100 people. Like the Indians would chop off their heads and take a skin from their scalp. 100 foreskins, hoping that this would cause David HaMelech to be killed in the course of doing that. But David is successful. At the same time that David becomes married to Michal, he also becomes soulmates, becomes not just friends, but more than friends with his brother-in-law, Yehonatan. And we know the many stories how later on, Yehonatan would actually save King David's life when the Talmud wants to give an example of true friendship, of a true relationship between people. The example that the Talmud uses is that of David and Yehonatan. Because David and Yehonatan, even though Yehonatan had nothing to gain personally by King David would be the next king, would take away from his own chances of becoming the king. Yet the true care and concern for each other was so great that not looking at his own best interests, Yehonatan was willing to be there to help David. This is the definition of true loyalty and true friendship that is expressed by Yehonatan for his friend. The young son-in-law of the king is obviously very, very popular, and people begin to love him and to sing songs about him. And we say in Tehillim that Shaul has slain thousands, King David has slain tens of thousands. And this caused Shaul to grow very jealous of his son-in-law, until one day when when David was playing the harp, Shaul, a fit of rage overtook him. He grabbed his spear and threw it at David, hoping to kill David. And David had to run away. Shaul had to hide. This is the story where Yonatan tells his friend, "Let's wait till the Rosh Chodesh meal, By the way, tomorrow night is Rosh Chodesh. Let's wait till the Rosh Chodesh meal, and let's see what happens when you're not at the family dinner at the Rosh Chodesh table. Let's see how our father responds, and from there I'll be able to tell you what your situation is and what's going to be with you in the future. So comes dinner, David is not there, and he sees Yonatan how his father gets very, very angry, and he realizes that it's not good news for his friend. They have a whole predetermined code where Yonatan goes out with his servant to go practice his shooting his bow and arrow, and after he shoots it far off into the bushes. He tells his servant that the arrow has gone beyond where you are, hinting to David that was hiding in the bushes that already the hatred is too great, it's beyond repair, and you should run away for your life. My father is never going to forgive you, and he wants to kill you. After the servant leaves and goes back to the castle, to the palace, David comes out of the bushes where he was hiding, and him and Yonatan embrace, and again, the ultimate epitome of friendship described right over there. David is hiding. While David is hiding, he's ended up near a city called Nov, a righteous city full of Kohanim, of priests, and there the residents, the priests in the city, give him some supplies, they give him food, they give him weapons, and slowly some people gather around King David. There was a man called Doeg HaEdomi, Doeg the Edomite, who saw that David was in the city of Nov and being protected by the people of the city of Nov. And he came and he tattled and told Shaul, the king, where David was hiding. And right away, King Saul embarks on a quest to hunt down and kill David. And there's actually several amazing stories that happened during that time that he's trying to find David. I'll share with you one of them. King David, early in his lifetime, was wondering, why did God create spiders? Why did God create insects? So there's different insects that seemingly have no value and no purpose in the world. They are just a burden. They're just a burden, and they come and they bother us, and etc. So God told David, you will see, one day you yourself will see the importance of every single creature. When King David is hiding in the cave, he's running from the soldiers of Shaul. They now know where King David is hiding because he's been snitched on by Doeg HaEdomi, hiding in the caves, and they're searching for him, they're finding him, and he's on the run from them. They're chasing after him. They're chasing after him. He hides in the cave. He hides in the cave and he watches, amazing, how immediately after comes to the cave to hide and to lie down, a spider comes and starts to make a spider web across the entire entrance of the entrance to the cave. Spider web covers the entire entrance of the cave. Only a short while goes by, and then the soldiers of Shaul HaMelech come running by, and they're looking through all the caves that are in the hills of the Judean mountains, about to run to this cave, and they see that there's spider webs all over the doorway of the cave. So they say, now there's no way that King David could be hiding in here, because there's so many spider webs on the doorway. He would have broken the spider webs if he was just running in, and therefore they don't even bother to look inside that cave. They keep on running, and the life of King David is spared. From this, he thanks God for the creation of every single creature, that every single creature was part of God's plan in saving the world. Later on, King David actually has an opportunity where he comes into the cave where Shaul is sleeping, and even though he has the opportunity to kill Shaul HaMelech, to kill this King Saul, he nevertheless does not take the opportunity, and instead he does not kill King Saul. He cuts off the corner of his cloak as a hint to his father-in-law that he had had the opportunity to kill him, but because King Saul was the anointed one of God, he did not feel, even though he was in defense of his own life, he didn't feel that it was right or proper that he should go and he should attack, kill king that having set up by King David, by God, and therefore he only cuts his coat, but he doesn't actually do anything to harm the king. Okay. Sometime after that, Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, and his son Yehonatan are fighting a mighty war against the Plishtim, and David and King Saul is killed in battle. His son is killed in battle, and here again you see the sincerity of David. That even though the man that had been trying to kill him, that had hated him, that had, we sometimes think people don't like us or hate us. I know people that think the whole world hates them. And most of us don't think the whole world hates us, but this guy hates me, and that guy is out for me. King David knew that Saul wanted to kill him, not just in his own mind. I mean, this was legit. Saul's army had chased after David and had done many, many things to try and kill him. And yet, when not only does David not get revenge and kill him when he had the opportunity, when Saul and his friend Jonathan are killed in war, he truly mourns for them like anyone else would mourn. And he, and after he finishes mourning for them, he is anointed by the Jewish people as the new king of Israel. So he goes out of hiding. He goes to Hebron, which was originally his base, and there he is anointed as the king of Judah. At this time, he is 30 years old. He was a wise man. What was unique about King David is that he would gather all the Jews together, all 12 tribes. He decided to establish a capital that would not be in the territory of any of the 12 tribes. Just like America, they copied the same concept and made Washington, D.C. in a territory that's not part of any state. So no state in the Union can say, oh, we are a more important state. The capital of the country is in our state. Washington, D.C. is an independent entity. It's not one of many of the states. So too, the city of Yerushalayim was new territory, especially the Temple Mount. And David deliberately did not build his palace and his, the home of God in Hebron, which was the tribe of Judah. That was their territory. That was, their base. He deliberately found a neutral location that could bring together all the Jewish people. Of course, when King David becomes the king, some of the other children of Saul start to fight with him, but King David quickly gets the support of the entire Jewish people. He's victorious in all of the battles, and sure enough, after a short while, he's able to bring together all of the Jewish people, and he makes a massive celebration. As I said, he moves the capital to Jerusalem, and he brings all of the Jews together as well. More importantly, though, than making a capital in Jerusalem, is that King David realizes that he needs to make a strong, protected Israel. So King David amasses a massive army. Most leaders of the Jewish people, let's understand, before King Saul, there was no real army, there was no king. There were groups of men in each tribe that would defend their territory, almost like a neighborhood, more than a neighborhood watch group, but they were local military, what's the word I'm looking for? Local groups that organize local militias. There was no central army for the entire country. What King David does is unique. He makes a massive army with 24,000 men from each and every one of the 12 tribes. So every single one of the 12 tribes of Israel is equally represented and equally invested in the army of the Jewish people. Now he's a huge army, 288,000 men, but they were a fierce army. They were not just it wasn't so much about the numbers, but he instilled within them a tremendous feeling of pride and of courageous bravery. They were known to be a brave army of fighters, and they went out, and one by one they fought their enemies, they conquered their territories, they put big taxes upon all the enemies of the Jews that until then had been terrorizing and oppressing the Jewish people. And literally within a number of years, King David was able to totally transform the security situation in Israel. That instead of being every little local tribe with its own local militia living in fear of the other nations around, but instead that all the Jews were living together in peace and in security and in the peace of mind, knowing that our enemies are unable to attack us. That was very, very important. And he literally, all of the countries around Israel were vanquished, they were subjugated. The money was pouring in from the taxes from what he had won in the wars. There was a lot of money in Israel. People were coming from all over the world to see Israel, and he became known as one of the mightiest rulers and warriors of that time. Okay. Just a brief mention of some of the wives. King David had 8 wives that are mentioned. Michal, Abinoam, Abigail, Maacha, Chagit, Avital, Eglah, and Bathsheba. We don't know a lot about most of those ladies, but there's 2 that are fairly famous and that deserve some brief history about their qualities. Michal already mentioned. Michal was the second eldest daughter of Shaul HaMelech. She was a very, very special woman, and he was married to her. Abigail. Abigail is a woman that is in Jewish history considered one of the wise women of history because she did one tremendous, brilliant act. She saved her husband's life. Basically, her husband was a man called Naval, and David, when he was fleeing from his father-in-law Saul, asked Naval to help him out with some provisions, etc., that he needed, and he thought that Naval would be kind and generous with him, as King David had protected the shepherds of Naval from other attacks and from the guerrilla war for the Plishtim, etc. Yet instead of repaying kindness with kindness, Naval, who was a drunkard and a terrible person, instead responds very foolishly and makes fun of King David, who was not yet the king. And when David hears this, David gathers together his army, says, we're going to go, we've been protecting this person. And I'm sorry, I'm yawning. We've been protecting this person. We're now going to go and attack him and take over. On the way there to Naval's house, Abigail, the wife of Naval, hears that King David is coming with his army to get revenge against Naval for cursing David and making fun of him and not giving him, not only he refused to give him supplies, but he had mocked David. And so when he hears this, she very wisely gathers together provisions. She runs ahead. She comes before David. She bows before him, and she says, please, my master. Oh my gosh. Please, my master. I should have had coffee before the class. Please, my master, don't hurt him. He spoke foolishness, and she takes the claim. And she says the famous words that are engraved on the tombstones, that may the soul of your enemies be bound, be in the slingshot of the hell, but may the soul of your master, it's on the tombstone. It says Taf Nun Tzadik Beis Hey. If you ever say the tombstone, those letters, they stand for Tehei Nishmasei Tzrura B'Tzrar HaChayim. May your soul be bound up in bond of life and eternal life. And King David is appeased, and he leaves Naval alone. 10 days later, God sends a plague, and Naval dies. After Naval dies, so King David proposes to Abigail, and he marries her. The third famous wife of King David is Bathsheba. Bathsheba is the wife of Uriah HaChitti. One day, King David is walking on the rooftop, and he sees this beautiful lady. She's bathing, and he becomes so in love with her, he cannot contain himself. And he finds out who her husband is. It's Uriah, who is a soldier in the army. He calls him Uriah, and Uriah speaks very, very disparagingly. He speaks about his master, Yoav, his master, who's the general, in front of the king. Calling the general a master in front of the king is disrespectful, for which he would have deserved to die. But King David doesn't punish him for that. King David sends him out to the front lines of battle. He dies in battle, and after he dies in battle, King David marries his widow, Bathsheba. This is something that God is very, very unhappy about, and he sent Nathan Hanavi, Nathan the prophet, to rebuke King David for his greed, causing Uriah to be killed so he could marry his wife. He technically didn't do a crime, technically, but morally he did a terrible thing. And for the rest of his life, King David is busy doing tshuva and confessing and asking God for forgiveness for this act of lust and greed where he took Bathsheba as a wife. This is one of the reasons why King David is considered one of the greatest kings ever in history. Saul HaMelech made a mistake. We all make mistakes. King Saul made a mistake that he was supposed to kill all the people and all the cattle of Amalek, and he didn't. He left some sheep alive, and the king was able to hide through the sheep. He knew black magic, and king of Amalek, whose name was Shaddai, at the moment, was able to hide through black magic and to come out and pretend to be a sheep. The point is that when the prophet comes to rebuke King Saul for his sin, first he justifies himself. He justifies his actions. I didn't do anything wrong. I was helping God. So I was saving beautiful sheep to be brought as offerings. So he tries to show how what he did is actually a good thing. And then when the prophet says that what God is upset, he didn't do what God said. So then he starts only after he realizes he's in trouble and that God's going to take away the kingdom from him, does he try and ask for forgiveness. Whereas David HaMelech, the moment that he's rebuked, he immediately takes responsibility and ownership for his mistake. Not only does he take ownership for it, but the rest of his life, he is doing teshuvah, he is repenting for this sin. And literally, as the famous verse of David says, "V'chatasi negdi sami," my sin is constantly before me. My sin is constantly before me, no matter how high he would ever reach on his own spiritual perfection. And indeed, we are told that later in his life, he was a tzaddik because he destroyed any level of temptation within him. It said that he would fast so often. The question is, what did he do for teshuvah? It said that he would fast so often that the fasting destroyed his temptations. He also would get up at dawn, sing the praises of God. He had a harp that was hanging in his room over his bed, and the windows were open. When dawn would come, the wind would rustle through the harp would play, and it would wake him up, and he would get up at dawn to sing the praises of God. And his whole life, he was working on making himself a better person and cleansing himself from that spiritual blemish that he had for his moment of weakness. That's the story of Bathsheba. Anyway, David HaMelech has many sons. The son that is the future. God told, I should say one thing. God told David HaMelech that because he had sinned with Bathsheba, since he did tshuva and he asked for forgiveness, God will forgive him. However, Bathsheba's child would not wouldn't live. She wouldn't be able to have any children. So Bathsheba should not became pregnant with a baby, and the baby died after got it was born, and the baby got very, very sick. It was very, very ill from the baby was born. And David prayed and fasted for 7 days for the baby to be cured. And on the 7th day, the baby passed away. And he accepted. He got it from his fasting. He said, God is just in what he does. And he accepted. And then they had another child called Solomon or Shlomo. Shlomo from the word shalom, which means peace. My son's name is Zalman. Zalman is the Yiddish version of Solomon, and etc. Shlomo HaMelech had another name, Yedidia. Yedidia means the beloved of Hashem. That was his legal name. The prophet gave him. We know him as Shlomo for bringing peace on the world. He's also called Yedidia. David had another son, Avshalom, who was his oldest son, who would lead a rebellion against him, and who would be eventually killed. He'd be running away from Yoav, the general of David. His long hair would get caught on a tree, and he'd be stuck in the tree by his hair. And Yoav would kill him and go, and David would be very upset about that. He had a son, Adoniah, and of course, Shlomo Melech. Anyway, David HaMelech lives till the age of 70. And he asked God to tell him when he would pass away. that God would not divulge to King David what day would be the day of his passing. However, all that he told him was that he would die on Shabbos. The day of his passing would be on Shabbos. And so David HaMelech, King David, had a custom that Shabbos, he didn't stop learning Torah for 1 second. Because it's known that the angel of death can have no control and no power over a person unless that person is not actively engaged in the study of Torah. Meaning, if you're studying Torah, you cannot be killed in the act of studying Torah. So he would sit from the moment Shabbos began until it ended, constantly studying Torah, so there would never be a moment where he would be vulnerable that this angel of death should be able to take him and kill him. And the angel of death couldn't kill him. Until one time, the angel of death made a trick, and it shook the trees outside his window as if like an army was approaching. And he heard the trees shaking like an army was coming. He ran to the window to see what happened. And as he was running to the window, he tripped. The angel of death made him trip. When he tripped, he lost his balance for a moment. He stopped saying words of Torah. And at that moment, the angel of death got him. And that's the moment when he passed away at the age of 70 years old. King David's greatest wish, his greatest ambition, was to be able to build a house for God. That was his greatest wish. However, God says to him, because you have blood on your hands, important blood. It's not a bad thing that David fought the war that David fought in order to protect the Jewish people. But at the end of the day, because you have blood on your hands, you are not the one who's going to build the home for me. Rather, your son Shlomo, he will be the one who will build a house for me instead. So King David purchases the land to be used for. King David purchases the land that will be used for the temple, the threshing field of Arnon. David even prepares the ground, etc. The actual building of the home is done by Shlomo HaMelech. And yet, because King David paid for it, even though Shlomo did it, but since King David paid for it, and King David bought the land, King David prepared it and all that, the house is referred to as the house of David, not from his son Shlomo HaMelech. Okay. The other great benefit of King David was the writing of Tehillim, which is an amazing thing. The book of Psalms, 150 chapters, 150 Psalms in the book of Tehillim. The book of Tehillim is an amazing book. It may be a discussion for another night. Let me share with you now about the Star of David. I promise to get to the Star of David. So why? So first of all, the answer to the question. So why is King David considered the greatest Jewish king? Number one is he was the first king to bring together all the Jewish people as one. Because even though he was not the first Jewish king, it was King Saul. But he was the first one that really, King Saul was a king, but he didn't bring all of the Jewish people together into one nation. The first one to make a united tribes of Israel, to bring us all together, to build a capital city in Jerusalem, to create a real national army that would then go fight the wars on all the borders of Israel, and to totally defeat all of our enemies and give us freedom and peace, the ability to serve God and happiness. That is all King David. Second reason why he's the greatest king is because he was also the most humble king. He was very great, and yet it was never beneath him to admit when he did something wrong, to say, I made a mistake, and spend the rest of his life in teshuva. Of course, he is a merit of the house of the temple, but more importantly, the Tehillim that we say over and over and over again, and maybe one day we'll talk about the importance of Tehillim and the value of Tehillim. This Tehillim, the Psalms that have kept the Jewish people going throughout millennia and millennia of darkness and hardship, these Tehillim are the lifeline of the Jewish people that we got from King David. Finally, is that the seed of Mashiach comes. Okay, Star of David. The history of the Star of David is, the history of the Star of David is fairly vague. If you go Google it online, you'll find different stories and different versions, but they are not based in Torah. Therefore, I'm not going to share them tonight because I am only here to share rabbinic, meaning I'm not a historian. I can share Torah. So whatever is based in Torah, I can share. Whatever is not my area of expertise that I'm going to sit and talk to you. I just wanted to share two things about the Star of David, really. So where does it come from? Actually, interestingly enough, Magen David I was about to say, is translated as the shield of David. But the shield of David most likely did not look like this. There is no historical source whatsoever that King David's shield had this star on it. In fact, there are sources that are right that the shield of David had the image of a menorah on it, not a star on it. Why is it called the shield of David? Obviously, it's become a very, very accepted Jewish symbol. The Rebbe had a Kiddush cup and a menorah that had the Star of David on it. And on the Rebbe's father's grave, side interesting tidbit of history, on the Rebbe's father's grave, which is in the Dnepropetrovsk, Tzinislav, over there, the grave was very old, was the core grave. And one time, when people were finally able to go to Russia, the Rebbe asked, they fix it up. They gave many detailed instructions about the new grave for his father's tombstone. The new tombstone for his father's grave. And the old one had a Star of David. He said they shouldn't change it. The new one should also have a Star of David on the Rebbe's father's grave. But the reason why, the metaphor, Fanction explains it, the reason why we talk about the Star of David as a Jewish symbol, because, as I said before, the army of David was known for their bravery, for their strength, their courage. And therefore, when we're afraid, we have the Magen David. We're reminded of David, whose army was a very, very brave army that was not afraid of anything. But there's two beautiful other messages. One is how is the Star of David shaped? Two triangles. It says in the Talmud that God gave a Torah of three. Torah is made up of three parts: the Torah, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Kesuvim, the writings. So Tanakh is the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, the books of the prophets, and the books of writing: the Ecclesiastes, Job, the book of Ruth, the book of Esther, etc. The Torah of three parts was given to a nation of three people: priests, Levites, and Israelites. So what protects these two, that brings them together, brings them both together, is the Star of David. One star with one three triangle, another triangle, and they each protect each other. That the Torah protects the Jewish people. The Jewish people ensure the continuation of the Torah, hence the interlaced triangles of the three-pronged Torah protecting the three-pronged Jewish people, and so to vice versa. Again, we'll end with a Kabbalistic thought about the Star of David, that we know the Star of David has 6 points, which these 6 points represent the 6 emotions of the person: Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Od, and Yisod. The six emotions of the person. And Malchut, which is kingdom, is what encompasses them all and is able to give them over to the next world. Malchus is called the mouth, speech. Speech takes all of your emotions and gives them out. So too, King David is the shield, Magen David, the shield of David, is the 7th of the emotions, which is Malchus, which is kingdom, that actually brings to fruition the other 6 points of the star, which represent the 6 emotions. Anyway, that's for tonight. I bless you all with a wonderful night. Lots of blessings. May we have the strength, the courage, the perseverance, but also the sensitivity and the humility of King David. That was his greatness. He was a brave warrior, not afraid to stand up to Goliath. He was also a humble man, willing to admit his own failings. So may we be like King David, warriors and humble at the same time. Good night. Lots of blessings to you all.